So this is, as usual, I like to do these sort of demonstrations using real projects when I've got something germane. And this is a quirky little addition that we're late in CDs on. So in spite of its somewhat fanciful appearance, it is a real project. And it just so happens that this little project of ours is an opportunity to show off pretty much everything that I wanted to talk about today. So that's kind of fun. And if along the way we get sidetracked and talk about other things, I mean, that's of course great as well. So it's just a very kind of neighborly little gabled house, and we're doing this kind of wild addition in the back, and that pretty much sums it up. I don't think I need to say much more about it than that. So one of the things that Vectorworks continues to do with every revision is sort of improve the door tool. So on this particular project, as you could see in the previous perspective and in this plan view, we've got this nice multi-fold door, except this project started in Vectorworks 2022, and there is not such a door in Vectorworks 2022. And so what I've had to do in order to make this work is actually have 3 doors here. There's the opening in the wall itself, which I've just highlighted. And so if I activate my object info palette, you can see that there. All right, it's a door in wall, and you'll notice if I can find it, it is just a cased opening. And I did include it on the schedule, oddly enough. We'll talk more about that later. But then I have this door here, which I've just clicked on. And in fact, you'll notice in the object info palette, it is not a door in a wall, it's just a door, as is that door there. So essentially, I have a cased opening that makes the wall opening, and which I'm going to have appear on the schedule because it shows the correct overall height and width. And then I have these other doors, which are just literally floating in space, right? I've got this bifold door here, and I've got this fixed panel over here. And so I just have to like manually place them where they're supposed to go, and kind of hope for the best, and it makes scheduling complicated, but it's what I got to do. So luckily, in 2023, which I'm currently in, let me switch my active layer here. There we go. So there are those 2 doors that I just have, again, placed in the opening. I'm going to go ahead and delete those. And there's the opening itself. And now I'm going to change that from a cased opening to a folding door, which is the new option here. And so there it is. It's a nice folding door. And I can do a bifold single or a bifold bipart, you know, as before. Now I wanted 3 panels, so not 2, not 4, 3. Kind of a Monty Python reference there for you. So instead, I'm going to choose the multiple option, and I'll give it 1 to the left, and I'll give it 2 on the right. And you can see that it calculates the leaf size for me. And let me go back to my plan view, and I'll probably need to adjust that. Yep. So I want those to be in swinging, so I'll go ahead and flip that. There we go, bring that to front. And I can go ahead and change the angle from 90 degrees to say 60 degrees, and that is actually kind of what I wanted. So that's pretty cool. And now I don't have to fudge my door schedule. This door is going to show up just the way that I want it to. I'm going to change the width to something a little more tractable, like 9 feet. There we go. So that's pretty darn cool. And I think pretty self-evident. You can sort of check the features out in a little bit more detail. And if I go back to over here, right? This is sort of an opportunity for me to demonstrate something else. So if we were looking at this in 2022, that door would look a little bit different. Other than Christopher, who I know is on this call, could anybody happen to spot the difference? Trick question. I mean, not really a trick question, but you know, we can make it interactive. Anyone see what's different about this than you would expect in 2022? You'll have to unmute yourself if you want to chime in or raise your hand or whatever. No? All right. Yeah. The handle points. Yeah, you've got these 8 handle points here on the door. And so I'm going to go ahead and get fancy and activate my X-ray mode here. And so I can just grab that handle point and snap to that corner. And I can grab this handle point and snap to, I think there's a little wall here. There we go. No, that wasn't what I expected. The fun of live demonstrations. Something like that, right? And if I want to start getting real precise, I still have my heads up display, so I can type 12 feet. I think I had it 2.5 inches, something like that before, right? And the same thing holds true for my vertical. It's just like the Twilight Zone. We control the horizontal, we control the vertical. And I need to quit while I'm ahead. So I can have a rather improbably placed door this way. Looks a bit short.
Francois?
Yeah.
So in plan, it looked like the one leaf was not connected to the other 2 leaves.
Yeah, that's right, because I wanted it to swing that way. But if I wanted 3 leaves together, because I want this door so that you can just like walk, you don't have to open the whole door, right? Like some of them come that way.
Gotcha.
Right, so that's by design. But if I wanted it to be, you know, a multiple, I'm pretty sure I could just do 0 leaves and 3 leaves, like that.
Got it.
Or probably I would stack it. If it was just 3 like that, I would stack it like yay.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. There we go. And oops, sorry. So the direct modeling isn't just reserved for doors. It also applies to windows. So I can, well, that was not happy. Let's go with this one. I can take that window, for example, and align it to the top of this door. I don't know what I did there. That was interesting. I think I'm moving the window. Yeah, I'm moving the window here. There we go. Right. So I can do all that kind of good stuff, and that is also applicable in plan view, right? So now in plan view, you can see that I've got these control points for windows as well as doors. And so I can align that window with whatever this feature is below. And there we go. And that's valid for, you know, existing units as well as new units, right? So I can draw them that way as well. If I want to move the unit, right, I need to be careful. If I'm used to just moving units by just dragging them this way, right? I can still do that. I've got two different walls here. I can still do that. I just have to be careful not to inadvertently grab the blue handle point where I get this kind of bidirection, this sort of four-way arrow. Might want to, if I can, where is that? Okay. Yeah. So I want to be careful, you know, that I don't grab this little blue point. If I want to just move the window, I can just move it that way. But if I want to stretch the window, then I'll get that little four-way arrow. And then I think if I edit the style under general, right? If I am using like a library, a catalog, excuse me, of windows, then, you know, obviously I can fix the width and height of the window in the styled window. And then if I do that, then suddenly, because the style of that window does not allow resizing it, now I can't resize it with this feature. So I'm going to undo that because it's not really what I want to do. Bunch of Z's. Yeah, it's close enough to what I intended. So so kind of nice, especially in schematic design. Want to just draw some things out, or if you want windows and doors to align with other geometry. That's pretty cool. So I rather like that. So I'm going to actually loop back to the door and window for a different reason, but I thought I'd talk about rendering. So this is a Cove fiber cement siding, these sort of scalloped shingles, and kind of a long story why this is here, but in any event, there it is. That's what we got. And one of the difficulties that I've sort of struggled with in the past is getting these kinds of textures to align. If I peel back a little bit, it's like, it looks okay. You know, I think you kind of get it. But since I'm talking to architects and designers and so forth, I'm probably going to get grief that these things don't align properly. And they're not aligning because these are actually separate walls, right? I could have made this all one wall, but they're actually two different kinds of walls. One is for the chimney enclosure, and the other is this sort of two-sided wall that captures a bench and so forth. So there's good reasons why all these things are modeled as different walls, but it certainly makes getting the rendering to line up somewhat challenging. Now it's less of an issue over here on the existing house, right? We've got this pretty straightforward yellow siding, right? And And on that, there's a pretty simple solution. Under Object Info, under my Render tab, I just use the world Z for origin. And what that does is that's just going to align, it's going to take the 0 Z datum of the file, and it's going to start all of the hatches from that point, which is great if you've got a Renderworks texture, or let me switch over to a hidden line view here for a second. I guess this one isn't properly, oh, there it is. Okay, great. Or a surface hatch that's applied to that texture that is essentially horizontal coursing, right? Because the setting in the Object Info palette is to use the world Z, not X or Y, just Z, so everything just sort of courses up. So if you've got brick or lap siding, you're happy as a clam with this setting, and that works fine. But when you have a texture like board and batten, where you've got verticals, right, or something like this, where you have both horizontal and vertical alignment of the textures, it gets a little trickier. So there's a new setting, and this is just like, again, this is probably sort of not as dramatic as the direct modeling of the doors, but really nice nonetheless. I'm going to go ahead and use my Select Similar tool. And I've got a setting for this to select all similar wall styles. So I'll just go ahead and select all similar wall styles, grab that one too. And then I've got 22 walls that I've selected across a couple of different layers. And then what I'll do is, instead of using world Z for origin, which it's going to recalculate that quickly, I'm going to deselect that. Oh, I'm sorry, instead of world Z for origin, right, you'll see that there's now a new button, use world origin. And so now everything's lining up much, much better than they did before. You can see over here, right, where I did have like 3 or 4 different textures sort of not quite lining up. Now they're lining up in a much more convincing fashion. So if it was just a matter of some pretty renderings, I'd say, okay, this is nice. But because this may not be a perfect rendering, because this is kind of a homemade texture, but because we're doing a lot of hidden line renderings for generating elevations, right, and it's still working on a couple of those walls, it's actually kind of important in my construction documents that these things, look right. And just kind of gave up, it looks like, on that wall. And so that's a really, I'm very, very happy with this feature. It's just one little button on the Object Info palette, but I can tell that's going to really improve my quality of life. Another cool little thing is wall component insertions. So here we're up on that rooftop. Let me go back to my kind of opening shot, right? There's this kind of sculptural chimney. There's a fireplace on the 2nd floor right over here. There's a fireplace on the rooftop. I've actually, if I go to top plan view, and you can see that I've got those 2 fireplaces at a slightly different angle. Yeah, thanks. It's giving me the bees across the bottom of the screen. That's hilarious. And that's so that my flues don't align, and so that they can skate past each other. Oh, sorry, that's not what I meant to hit. But that's not really what I wanted to talk about. So this wall has multiple components, right? There's an overall thickness for that cove siding. I actually made it the thickness of 2 layers of cove siding because it's lapped over each other. It's got the sheathing, it's got the framing, it's got the drywall, and then you're seeing the baseboard there below, which obviously this is inside a fireplace enclosure. There shouldn't be a baseboard or some drywall, so I got some work to do here. But notice that the fireplace, which is inserted in the wall, is just kind of, its insertion point is just right here at the outside face of the cove siding, which I don't need to tell you is not accurate or realistic. And so in the past, what I would have had to have done is under the insertion option in the object info palette, I would have had to done a little mental arithmetic and maybe inserted it inward by say 1.5 inches. I'm just guessing, but I guessed right. So that it is actually being inserted to the face of the frame, not to the face of the wall itself. But in order to know what that insertion offset was, I would need to keep in my head what the different material thicknesses are. And maybe I've got that fireplace in a stucco wall or in a stone wall or, you know, whatever. So, so that's how I had to do things before, but you'll notice that now I've got this insert option and I've got a whole host of insertion options. And so instead of inserting it relative to the wall's left edge, I can go and insert it relative to the core component left edge. And if I've built my wall style correctly, then it will go ahead and insert to the outside face of frame if I've identified that as the core component. But sometimes it's possible that I may not want to insert to the core component. And so under these insertion options, right, I've got the wall, the core component, and those are really the 2 things that I can insert relative to. But now if I go over and look at this wall style, and let's go ahead and edit that style so we can see it. You can see that there is now a new column in 2023, right, which is my insertion location. And so in this wall style, I have stipulated, it just so happens that I'm doing it with the core component here. So I've stipulated that I'm going to insert relative to the outside face of the wall stud. I could stipulate that I would insert to the outside face of the sheathing, for example, right, which is how I would insert a door or a window. The nailing flange would go right to the sheathing, yeah? So I'll hit OK there, and sure, fine, update all that. Right. And so now when I click on this fireplace, right, I'll just drag it out and go ahead and drag it back in and insert it at the midpoint of that wall and flip it. And instead of inserting to the wall edge, I will go ahead and wall insert location. And so now it will go ahead and insert to what I've nicely positioned. I didn't want to mess with that. So instead of the left edge of the core, I'll go ahead and choose to insert it relative to the insert location. And why didn't it move? Maybe I didn't update that wall style. No, I did. That's Yeah, there we go. Okay. I think it just needed to update that wall style. Again, that's a nice new feature where now I don't have to do all of these gymnastics to figure out where I should insert objects and calculate that. I can just build my wall style with an insertion reference point that could be distinct from the core component, and then I've got those options in a little bit better control, which I like. So that's a nice little new feature. Then while we're talking about walls, I noticed that Al is here, and I'm really pleased. I think Al and I probably, Al and I probably a couple of times a month will either praise the curtain wall or kvetch about it. Kind of alternates one or the other. It's a great tool. Prior to 2023, if you were to double click on a curtain wall, you would get this dialog box here, which I've dramatically rendered in 3 dimensions. You would get this dialog box here, and it would ask you whether you wanted to reshape the curtain wall or use the edit curtain wall tool feature. And this dialog box is a thing of the past. Now, if I click on a curtain wall and I just double click on it, I immediately get this edit curtain wall tool that just activates right away. So that's right up here. You'll see that there is a reshape mode, right? So I can still tweak the peaks, like have it follow this slope, for example, or follow that slope. I can still do that. But by default, it just these 2 modes have been taken out of this dialog box and then placed within the tool mode. It's a little thing, but man, since I use curtain walls quite a bit for things like this, screen porches, that really makes a big difference. And I'm sorry, I'm just kind of compulsive about it. I gotta fix this column. It should be going right down to the slab, right? So now if I want to, I can just click on this now that I've reshaped it, right? And I can just immediately goes to these frame tools. So I can just delete these extraneous frames that got auto-generated when I reshaped the bottom of the wall. Again, simple little user interface stuff, but this is like, you know, when they introduced double clicking to allow us to edit groups, that was like a tiny thing, and it's, you know, probably extended my lifespan by a couple of months from all the time that I don't have to spend, you know, with the extra gestures. So so I really love that new editing feature on the curtain wall tool. And again, since a lot of what I do is our firm does is residential, and we do a lot of screen porches, this being Texas, we actually use this tool quite a bit. All right, another big one, back to doors, is the graphic legends tool. This is a brand new tool. You will find it in your notes and dimensions menu, tool set, not menu, sorry, tool set. Graphic legend right over here. If you don't see it in yours, it may be because you're using a custom workspace, and so you might need to add it to your custom workspace. Or Vectorworks will add a workspace with new tools, and so a bunch of tools will be, you know, in there. So I've gone ahead and created one here, but I'll just go ahead and move that to the side and make another one. So the graphic legend tool, you just essentially draw a rectangle and then click on the settings, and you can start playing away. So the first thing you're going to want to do is define what is this a legend for. In this case, I would like for it to be door types. So I can go ahead and do a legend source over here from this pull down menu. So I could pull in all my doors, right? Or I could use a legend for, anything, lights, any of these objects can show up on your legend. What I find to be a little easier to deal with is, instead of doing from the pull down menu here, is to define a custom source, and then you get the custom selection criteria that we're probably familiar with. So I'm going to choose everything whose type is a door, but then I'm going to add some additional filtration, so to speak. And the layer has to be, instead of has to be, let's make it is not any of my existing floor layers. So I'm going to exclude floor existing 1 and floor existing 2, because I've got some as-built doors that aren't on the door schedule. I don't need to show types, right? I can choose whether I want to include those in symbols or plugin objects, viewport annotations, blah, blah, blah. So I'm going to hit that and hit OK. And OK. And in the object info palette, I will recalculate. There's a recalculate button there. Oh, it doesn't seem to be working. Let's see. All right, let's try this again. Let's go to my legend source. Oh, that's very odd. All right, that didn't seem to stick. So type is door, and layer is not existing 1 and is not existing 2, and hit OK. And hit OK. There we go. All right, well, it's getting there, but it's it's a start, but it's not at all what I want. So we're gonna go back and keep messing with that. So if I go back to my legend source, right, one of the things I can do is I can report by, and I can choose to report them by class, by the design layer. If I choose the door widget here, right, there's a series of all the fields that go into the door plugin object, and there are quite a few of them. So I'm going to go all the way down here to the use, and there's a user field 1 through 10, right? And so I've chosen in my doors and to go ahead and use user field 1 to identify the door's type, right? And if I show you this, the door schedule down below here, you can see that I've got a type column, A, B, C, D, and so forth. So all of that is in user field 1. And so now I will hit OK. And that's a little bit better. And now let's look at cell visibility and sorting, right? So I can sort by the summary value. Like that. And descending or custom, or by layer name, right? Or by none, and then it'll just sort itself. And it didn't, I've got a blank for one of these, so it didn't know what to do with it. So it's just giving it this random string. So I'll hit OK. So now they're more in the order in which I would like to see them. Let me keep playing with it. I I can define the legend image. So here it will show me the top plan view, but I can ask it to show me a front view. And I can show low, medium, or high detail, depending on how I've defined those plugin objects. And I can also ask for some vertical dimensions. So I'll just go ahead and do, let's say, overall, top and bottom. And I've got my dimension standards, so it'll follow my dimension standards. I can preview all 6 of these fields. There they are. Who knows what that one is, but we'll figure that out soon enough. And so now my door legend's starting to look more like what I'm hoping for, right? And I don't, it's not laying out nicely on the page, so I'm just going to drag these handle points. And if I make them wide enough, there we go, it'll give me 3 cells wide. These are kind of big, so instead of a 1/4 inch, I'll make them 3/16. And now the cells have scaled proportionately, so I'll resize them this way. I probably want a title, so I'll give it edit title layout, and I will make that Helvetica, bold, italic. And sorry, keep that object info open. I will display the title, and then I can actually give it a title. Door types, right? And then I can also edit the cell layout. So when I do that, I get this preview, right? This gray area is the box in which the image will display. So I can make that box wider or taller in order to reduce my margins to the cell that it is displayed in. And then I have this little gray box at the bottom, which is a visual clue, which tells me whether everything is going to be centered within this box. So I can center it like that and put it top, or I guess center, or bottom. Right. And let's see, I think there's one other thing I want to do, cell visibility, filter by, oh, yeah, so I want to go ahead and add a label here. So I'll just throw in a text block, and I'll put in some kind of infill text. There it is. I'll go ahead and center it. And that looks about right. And I've Calibri 8-point horizontal alignment. I'll make it center, right? And then at the bottom, I'll use dynamic text. So if you're used to things like the new drawing label tool that was introduced in 2022, or the data tags, right? It's very similar to that. And so I'll define the graphic legend. And so here I will go ahead and define the source. That's the object parameters, right? So for doors, you know, there aren't, let me find door. You know, there are quite a few here, and I'll once again scroll down to user field 1, there it is. And I will go ahead and add that to the definition. So it'll add it up there. There's that little piece of script. Okay. And so now when I edit, leave that cell, then it's going to go ahead and label them A, B, C, D, F, and who knows what that is. We'll get to that. So let me go back to editing the cell layout. I'm going to actually move this over and align it here and align that left. And then I'll just duplicate it. And I won't use dynamic text on this, and I'll make it right aligned. Moving it over just a little bit. Okay. I'll throw in a letter here. That'll help me sort of visually. Maybe I'll align. Move that over just a tad. There we go. That looks fantastic. Ah, there it is. Type A, type B, type C, type D, and so on and so forth. And maybe I'm not happy with these dimensions. My dimensioning options are a little limited. So let me see. I think. Yeah, if I double click on the legend, I can edit annotations. And so I'm now I can edit the annotations for any number of my cells. I think we're in cell 5 here. And so I can go ahead and dimension that. And dimension this, and then if I want to, I can dimension my styles. Maybe no fill. Right. And then under my cell visibility and sorting. Nope.
Right, so I'm sorry. What are you digging for?
Oh, I'm trying to turn off my auto dimensioning that I turned off initially. That I turned on initially.
Oh, and in the
I'm drawing a blank.
yeah, excuse me. I thought it was the legend image, isn't where you define the limit.
Yeah, there it is. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
So vertical dimension, none, right? Like that probably works for Windows. Better place for that, not so much doors. Right. So I can go in and dimension all of these. If I have muntins in those, I can dimension where they go and so on and so forth. So I can keep going on this, and eventually I will be able to get it to where I like it. I'm pretty close here, and then I can go ahead and save this as a styled legend. That's the beauty, is once I do that, then it shows up in the resource manager, and I can use it project after project after project. And once I've set it up, all I need to do is update my dimensioning and so forth. If we go back to move this off here. We go back to our door schedule. Right. There's the door schedule. Can you guys see that door schedule?
Yes.
Okay, cool. All right, so I'll go ahead and recalculate that because remember I added that door. So this one probably needs to be door 11, right? And here's that bifold bipart. It's not a multi-slide at all. It's a multi-fold. Okay. And there it is. And there it is. And you can see over here, I defined door user field 1 as the door type because I was already using manufacturer and model. So I added this field for door type. There's any number of user defined fields that I could have chosen. I just happened to choose this one. And I think that's pretty good. Oh, no. Let me go back to here. Yep, they're all typed. So maybe I don't have an E. Make that E. All right. And if I recalculate that, somewhere I've got a recalcitrant door that's a type here. I think I'm asking it to hide empty cells. So I'm going to need to hunt down somewhere in the project. There's a door object that's been inserted that's not showing up on the schedule, but that for some reason is showing up in my door legend. So a little bit of troubleshooting there for me. And when I recalculate, it looks like I've lost my dimensions, so I'll need to go back and redimension it. So the graphic legend, I can use it for doors and windows. In the past, when I've wanted to do this, I've either had to manually do a section viewport and crop around every door and window type that was in my project, which you can imagine that's tedious to set up, and then anything moves and now you've got to find the crop and move it, just kind of a hassle. Or set up a dedicated layer and it's just a door warehouse and there's a bunch of doors floating there, and you make sure not to show those up on the schedule, and then you take a front elevation of that and put it in a viewport. And that's problematic because now you've got two of the same door everywhere, and what if one changes? Now you've got to change it everywhere else. I mean, there's just creating a door type legend was highly problematic prior to this tool. It could be done, but it was highly manual, and I'm a BIM guy and I don't like that. So anyway, so this is great, and it's not just for doors and windows. Anything at all that you would want a legend for, your electrical fixtures, your plumbing fixtures, wall types, any number of these things are fair game. So I think I've got a little bit more time, and there's one more I wanted to show, unless there's a question on graphic legends that I will do my best to answer. If anyone has a question, you want to unmute yourself. All right, I'm going to move on. We can circle back if you have something. Elevation benchmarks. That tool has been revamped. So there is a legacy tool, elevation benchmarks. I've got some here, right? And essentially, for the most part, you kind of place it manually, label it manually, and so on. There's a new elevation benchmark tool, and that lives, again, in your dimensions and notes palette. and it should be here under elevation benchmark. So it looks like the old tool. And if I just click anywhere, it's going to snap down here to finish floor 1 because I've chosen it to have the benchmark datum of finished floor. So under the object info palette, if we look at this, I can look at that benchmark, and I can choose it to be on a z-axis or a y-axis in 2D mode. So the benchmark datum, and if I go to that pull down menu, it will go to all 3 of my stories, and it will look for every level type that is in that story. So in this case, I've got finished floor for story 1. Right? And I could just duplicate that, but then choose finished floor for story 2, and it just goes up to there. And I could duplicate that and change it to finished floor of story 3, and there it is. Maybe I don't like the graphics; they're kind of chunky for me, right? So I can edit the marker layout. And again, this looks very much like the edit modes for data tags and drawing labels and so on and so forth. So I can go ahead and take that dynamic text and change the font size to 8. Move that down. I can take my marker and scale it. I can take all that and give it a heavier line weight, perhaps. And, you know, so on and so forth. Make it just the way I like it. And then, of course, I can go ahead and save that as a style. And in this case, I'll just delete these 2 and just duplicate it and just change that finished floor and duplicate that and change that finished floor. So those are just automatically just tied to my story elevation. In this case, I've got another one over here. And I have a McMansion tent that I'm having to contend with here. And so the highest natural grade for this particular zone in the tent is, let me get rid of this. You can see that better, is 574.8. And that happens to be off by a given amount from the z-axis of the overall model. So I'll just go ahead and change that to user reference instead of a story reference, right? Or I can just make it, you know, custom, but if it's a user reference, then I can sort of define what the reference elevation is, 575.3 below that layer, and then I'll just note it as highest natural grade zone 3. And I did have to add this marker layout to add this particular note. So again, if I go and use dynamic text, story level type. That was this one. So I just object parameters, and the parameter was the note. So I just chose that and then added it to this current field. And that's how I was able to get, when I define whatever I type in this note here, there is no zone 5, but if I change that 5 to 3, then that note will change. So I can customize it when I've got a custom height, or I can just sort of build these right so that they follow my story benchmarks, which is kind of cool. All right, well, that's kind of what I was planning on running through today. Is there anything I just breezed past too quickly, or anything anyone wants to circle back and revisit? You can throw a question in the chat or unmute yourself. Or
so, Francois, if you changed, for instance, if the ceiling height in your low ground floor grows by a foot, and you change that designation on your stories, then we should expect these live markers to adjust automatically.
yeah, if I change story 2 from 10 feet to 11 feet and move that and everything above it.
Mm-hmm.
There we go. So, yeah, those just move to 11 feet. That just, if I hit undo, you can see they'll shift down, hit redo, they shift up. The drawing didn't change because I need to update the viewport, right?
Right.
If I update the viewport, then the drawing will change. So let's undo that.
Beautiful.
That's good. That'll be a mess. Yep.
Thank you, Francois.
Rob, did I miss anything important on Legends? I'm sure I did. It's a pretty wicked tool.
No, I mean, I don't think you did. I think the key thing there is if you can pull the data, you can represent it pretty much. And so that there's really no limit to what you can do. I mean, I've used it personally for wall panels, you know, and you can show the graphic attributes of those and spell them out. Whereas I used to have a spreadsheet to say, you know, there's 12 of type X. Now I could tie it into the data tag and do it. Right. So
yeah, you could do a legend for, you know, all of your handrail types. I think a good way of thinking about it is if it's a plugin object in Vectorworks, it's low hanging fruit for the legend tool. And even if it's not a plugin object, if you could just attach a record format to it, which basically means anything else, you can make a legend out of it, you know. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe we should have like a little competition. Let's see if you can do an entire set of working drawings just with the legend. The legend generates the drawings for you. That would be fun. So yeah, it's pretty darn cool. And again, you know, it's a bit of a chore to set it up, but once you've got it set up, you can just make it a style, and then you're off to the races, and you can duplicate the style and edit it. So, you know, you get your doors the way you like them, and then it's pretty easy to take your door legend and tweak it to become a window legend. So yeah. All right, anything else?
Hey, Francois, I was going to add that it's great to see that these new features integrated into a project at a late stage, but the elevation benchmarks and the window, door and window feature can be used in the early stages of design as well. So like, especially when you're just kind of sketching out your eye.
Yeah, yeah, that's a good point, Keith. I happened to grab this file just because it just has almost everything I wanted in the file, and it happens to be, you know, pretty far along. But yeah, particularly the direct modeling, like where you're just kind of drawing windows and doors like rectangles directly onto the elevation. I didn't really demonstrate that. Let me go back to that. I think there's a class that got turned off here, but anyway. If I have a custom window, right? And I haven't, oh, there it is. So if in the custom window mode, right? There's the insertion mode, there's the offset insertion, and then there's this new mode right here. And so I can just go on a wall and drag a window. And, you know, I've got a class turned off or grayed out or something.
Yeah, and even though the interactive sizing mode shows, I mean, basically you're drawing a rectangle onto the face, but if you have
Right.
you can have a shaped window, like a circular window selected and still use the tool, still use that mode.
Yeah. That's right. So yeah, and this is unstyled, but I could just go ahead and turn it into, you know, my existing window style, whatever I've got, or I think these are unstyled. But if I'd made those into a style, for example, then I could draw with those. Yep. Excellent point. All right. Nothing in the chat. Okay, well, thanks everybody for dropping by, and that's kind of all the classes turned on. That's kind of a mess. Thanks for dropping by, and I hope you have fun with 2023, and I will see you all next month.